Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear this music, and we stop it really quick so you can't hear it and enjoy it because we're afraid we'll be sued. You know it's an episode of New-Bop-A-Lula, a completely pointless name I came up with for these theme shows, simply so I could run that Gene Vincent theme song just long enough to tantalize you and not enjoy it properly. But you can go listen to it; it's on YouTube. And basically, the premise of these episodes is simply that I get lots of books that I want to read, and I buy lots of books I never get around to reading, and I often want to write pieces or essays about books that are coming out, and none of those things, no, I never get around to reading them. And these are books I have not actually read, most of them, but they're new books. They're books you might enjoy. They're books you might want to give somebody for a Christmas present if you buy them not from Amazon. Don't buy them from Amazon because we hate Amazon. We hate Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post. But we do want you to buy books from Powell's and all the great, and Skylight Books and Bookshop and online and your local independent bookshops. So these are books you could order through them, okay? So we've got a number of books. I haven't really read these new volumes, though here's a sort of not true because I have read these years ago. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Harville in England started publishing these wonderful new translations of a great Russian writer named Andrey Platonov, who I started to discover in that period because of the great work of Robert Chandler. We talked about this guy last week, and his wife and his kind of team of devoted Russian translators who have been busily trying to find Platonov's best texts. It's hard to find them because he was during Stalin's years. He was a critic of Stalin. Stalin didn't like him, and Stalin's functionaries didn't like him, and it was hard to get his books published properly, like most good writers in any day and age. So Chandler published these in Harville editions in England, and I read them and really loved them. And one's called the Happy Moscow. It's the one I remember enjoying the most. Soul, which is a lot of stories and novellas, and another short novel called The Foundation Pit. Now these are filled with textual notes, great historical introductions by Chandler and his team, enormous sections of translation notes, and they're republished in the past 8 years. I didn't know this, by New York Review of Books. New York Review of Books is the kind of literary arm of that. Really, it's a boring magazine. The New York Review of Books is really boring, and it comes out every week. It's incredibly boring, and I stopped reading it years ago. But they actually publish really good stuff. They publish really nice books, and the books, they're kind of handsome, but they're a little arty to me. But the books themselves are really good, and they have a really good list. And they're doing these wonderful Platonovs, and you can get them from your local bookshops. And Chandler's also been working on this massive version of this big novel of Platonov's called Shevin-Gur. I've read sections of it, and the Russian writers I've known over the years tell me it's considered one of the greatest Russian novels of the century. This is an old edition. I have all these old editions, which I'm trading in for the new New York Review of Books editions. Really interesting writer. If you're interested in Russian writers, writers who had trouble surviving during Stalin, and writers with a great lyrical strangeness to their work. This is a new book, just came through in my mailbox this week. Red Comet by Heather Clark. It's a massive new biography of a woman who died, I think, in her 30s. Plath did not live very long. It's 1,000 plus, nearly 1,100 pages of biography and notes. And I really have been interested in writing about this biography for a variety of reasons. One, I've always been a big fan of Ted. I like Ted Hughes' poetry. I know I'm not supposed to, but I always liked his poetry. And I was a big fan of Plath all my life, and I loved her novel The Bell Jar. And I used to live in part of in Primrose Hill, this lovely, beautiful, it was really a funky kind of run-down little neighborhood when I lived there in the early 80s, which is now a big movie star hangout, super wealthy. Beautiful little part of North London. And I lived in this weird little flat for many months, what I loved. And I used to walk by the old house that she shared when she was living when she died, when she killed herself. A sad ending, and she was clearly had a difficult young life. A wonderful poet, wonderful writer. I'm interested in this biography, and I haven't even cracked it, but I may try to read it over Christmas or someday. because almost all of the press and all the journalism and all the criticism about Plath and Ted Hughes seems designed to talk about their marriage. They constantly talk about whether he abused her or whether he was sleeping around on her, and everything was, and it was like a victimization. He had done things to her. I don't know. I literally do not know, because I never wanted to read the biographies of this part of the story. I always was more interested in their work, and I'm kind of curious what happened in their lives. But at the same time, whatever happened in their lives, I'm kind of interested in just an assessment of both their work, because I think they're both extremely interesting poets who I've enjoyed a great deal. So anyway, there's a huge, gigantic book. I may have to get the Kindle of this, though, because I don't know where the hell I'm going to put that. Okay, this I've had for ages. We just talked about Clark Ashton Smith, one of my favorite California writers now. And this came from the great people at Hippocampus Press. This is just the ARC, the Advanced Review Copy, which I've had for maybe even a couple of years now, which is the letters of Clark Ashton Smith and August Derleth, who was a writer, and also editor and publisher of Arkham House, the great publishers who pretty much saved the name and reputations of people like Smith and H.P. Lovecraft. And this is just this part of this collected series of letters that they're doing of Clark Ashton Smith, a great labor of love by David E. Schultz and S.T. Joshi, the irrepressible and unavoidable S.T. Joshi. He's everywhere, and he's always interesting and always good. So that's a kind of a cool book. The actual book has just come out, and I haven't got a copy of that, but you might want to check that out. This is another book. I don't normally like compendiums, like African American literature, poetry of 250 years, these sort of theme anthologies. They don't really read well for me. I don't like to read theme anthologies. But it's a lovely addition if you're interested, as many people are now, in American black culture and Afro-American culture and Afro-American poetry. This has got, I don't know, I just browsed through it. I don't know many of these poets. There's a huge section, hundreds of pages of living poets, which I think is the best part of this volume. And it looks like a nice book, and again, a nice book at Christmas. I haven't even read it. I haven't read the introduction, but I will actually probably put this on my shelf and just kind of browse through it over the next few years. And some of the poets they have in here, they've got the Rita Dove, and they've got Marilyn Nelson, and then they've got the most obvious Gwendolyn Brooks, Langston Hughes. So but then they go back to even a much earlier pre-Civil War poets, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. So it's a great volume if you're interested in the subject, or somebody's interested in the subject. Finally, here's a book I wanted to review simply because I love Balzac. I don't know if I can say that in polite. Can I say that in polite? I love Balzac, and I like Balzac in the bathtub. You can quote me. He loves Balzac in the bathtub, and I Lost Illusions. I still have my old Penguin edition up there on the shelf. Has been retranslated. It's come out. I tried to do a review of this for somebody, but nobody was interested. In the University of Minnesota Press. And it's a new translation by Raymond and MacKenzie. And from what I could see, it looks like University of Minnesota Press, who's a good academic press, may be trying to do more Balzac. So I prefer my old Penguin, the small size trade paperback, mass market paperback. But it's a new translation, and it's a great book. It's a brilliant book about writers, actually, and it's when you're reading it. I remember reading this in London, and all the bullshit about how people review each other's books and help get each other book review jobs if they review their books. It all happens in this book, besides all the gangsters and criminals and Parisian ne'er-do-wells. Balzac is a great read. Especially, you have to get past the first 50 pages, which are sometimes a little difficult, but he's a terrific read. So there's a nice new edition of Lost Illusions if you're interested in Balzac in the bathtub. If you love Balzac, and I love Balzac. Okay, take care, stay safe through the election, and we'll see you all soon, hopefully in another administration than the one we're in. Okay, happy bathing.